Welcome to the Internet of Things equation, a podcast when I talk about the Internet of Things domain both from the technical and business perspectives. I'm Łukasz Malinowski, the Internet of Things advisor and trainer. Simon has been into technology since early childhood. He became involved in IoT in 2015. 1 year later, he founded the Datacake company. Using content marketing and digital channels, he grew Datacake to 20,000 users worldwide in 2023. That is quite an achievement. Let's learn more about it. Hello, Simon. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
Hello, Lucas. Thanks also for inviting me, and nice to meet you. And thanks for letting me here.
You achieved a huge success. So, if you could give us a brief history lesson about yourself and then how you end up where you are right now.
For sure. Well, I grew up with computers, more or less. So I'm 39 years old, born in 85, and I grew up with computers, technology, software. And because of that, technology has always been a part of every job that I did. And I was basically working for a company that wanted to do some connectivity and connected machines. And then we were starting connecting machines to the internet, and we were missing a platform. And that was basically how the whole IoT thing got off and how I got into IoT.
Connecting things to the internet, this is the core value proposition of IoT, but doing that in the low code manner, this is like totally different level of complexity when we look from the backend perspective. Because for the user, it's just point and click and magic happens. How is it actually to build a low code IoT platform from the inside?
I think it's a challenge sometimes. I can also give you a little bit background information why we decided to make low code. It was not that we started meeting up and then saying like, "Hey, we need to found an IoT company. Let's call it Datacake, and we're offering a low code IoT platform." Basically, I was working for a company. It's a family company, and they are producing welding fume extraction machines. Job was that we needed to make a platform that can be used for people or used by people that usually don't have any knowledge in programming, don't have any knowledge in IoT. They want to see their data. They probably want to be able to create a couple of rules. And that was basically the task. And then we started designing the backend based on time series data, device management, and so on. But then the real challenge was actually the front end. If you are able to code something, then no matter what kind of request the customer has, you can bring it into code. But for a no code platform or low code, the challenge is that you need to be very flexible on the front end, but still need to make it so easy that people can use it. The biggest challenge that we had was basically to make it low code or no code so that you can use it directly, but then also being able to get a business value out of it. And sometimes, as you know, IoT is a general thing. There are so many different kinds of use cases, and to get them all onto our platform, that was the biggest challenge so far.
IoT is just a technical capability. The fact that you connect some device to the internet doesn't do any good for anyone. You need to have the
Yeah.
some backend like extracting value from data and producing some kind of business outcomes. But you mentioned challenges, and I would really like to focus on them. Maybe that's not the best angle, but I'm very curious. Managing huge fleets of IoT devices or devices in general is extremely difficult. And I'm old school guy, so I do it using code. You are the new kid on the block, and you're using that using the node code approach. So how is that even possible? Like, how can you manage huge fleet of devices without writing a single line of code? From the
Yeah.
user's perspective, of course, because you've
Yeah.
written code yourself, right?
Yeah, of course. We started basically with having a look at what the customers are actually doing on Datacake. And I remember a time when we started introducing LoRaWAN devices into the platform, that people were starting using the platform all over the world. And they were bringing just a few devices, then 10 devices. And at some point, very early, we had a customer that was scaling because of the COVID crisis. He was able to sell CO2 devices, and then within a few weeks, he was bringing hundreds of devices to the platform. And he was just basically adding them. And it was a mess at the end of the day because he was not using the functionalities that we've built into for managing it because we weren't showing them on the front end. We took a look at all these customers, and then our approach was something which we call a product definition. And this is more or less our way of how to deal with larger fleets. Basically, you can say that any device that is on Datacake belongs to a product, and there can be one device that has one product, but a single product can have not just one device, but also 100 devices. And then the actual definition of that device, like the payload decoding, the dashboard design, database schemas, and everything else that has to do with decoding, encoding, storing data, is defined in that product, and the individual data is stored on the device. And that means that customers could go to the platform and say, like, okay, I've got this customer, or I want to sell a device and I'm going to sell hundreds or thousands of these devices, and I want them to look the same, easy to handle, and so on. And then they create a product, like a definition. And then in the production, they basically add hundreds of devices to the same product, and automatically they all look the same, behave the same, but you have some features like environment. So like from a coding perspective, it's like a top level variable for setting and a default variable and inheritance between everything. But basically this allows to bring a very flexible structure that you can use for any IoT device on Datacake, and this makes it super easy to scale. One of the things that we also did is that this product infrastructure is available throughout the whole platform. So, for example, one of the challenges that we had when we grew, and again, it was also with these CO2 monitors, they wanted to send notifications, a notification if the CO2 level is too high. And if you have 1,000 devices and you build a basic notification, you would need thousands of these rules, which makes no sense at all. Nobody can manage thousands of rules and nobody wants to do it. And so we introduced rules on a product level. And that means you have a device group of 1,000 devices, and you just need one rule, and you apply the rule to the product. And you can say, if any of those devices is over that kind of threshold, please send an email or SMS. And then we introduced some super nice features into the platform, like the email editor. You can use a template language in there. You can write your email and then a template language like triggering device or a device exceeding whatever. And this really helps to manage a fleet of hundreds or thousand devices within just a few hours. And then customers just basically need to add devices over and over again. Important thing about that was basically that the backend was designed in that way that it can hold the data exactly like we wanted it to be on the platform.
You use the various abstractions exposed to the users in easy to understand fashion. But you mentioned something extremely interesting, is that you created that capability on the backend, but it was at first not exposed to the end users, and that created some kind of challenges from the user perspective. Could you maybe give us some more insights into how that happened, and is if that's a general pattern that you've got very well defined backend, but in terms of the user behavior, you just adopting to what you see on the platform. Is that the case, or you've got different strategy to meet user needs?
Yeah, I would say that is the case on one side, but also we have additional strategies to deal with that. But let's talk a little bit more about what you said or at the beginning that was really interesting because we had the feature on the back end but was not exposed on the front end. And actually, this happens, I would say, lots of times. So, because when we grow, there were always new customers coming. Then we were able to get bigger customers. They had completely different requirements to the platform, and basically, our the solution team that brings out these solutions very often in these cases work with our REST API or some custom scripts to create like a second backend or a custom script that does some special automation or brings a certain piece of code that works for this particular customer. And if that repeats over and over again, then we actually turn this specific design thing for that customer into a feature. And that happens over and over again. With the product definition that I was just talking about, that was not exposed to the front end, it was a little bit different because that was there on the platform right at the very first moment in the back end, because it also makes the lives of our developers more easy because then they have a fixed structure in the back end. We are using a Python backend and a database structure, which is, I wouldn't say old school, but it's like a thing that you see over and over again on software as a service systems. And so the structure needs to be in the backend already. It's just the thing how you expose it to the front end, which is more challenging here.
Let me dive deep into another thing that you mentioned, because that's fascinating for me, as I'm like all-time solution architect, so I want to learn from you basically. And you mentioned that your solution team got a way to use some scripts or some functionality to develop features specific for a very specific customer, but those features are not native to the platform, so to speak. And if you see the adoption, then you do encodes the proper development of those functionalities as features of the core platform. If that is the case?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it is really smart. This way, you do not like, at least from my perspective, it looks like very agile development of the platform, right? And if there are some edge cases that are not really into the whole model of the backend, you can just script them for that specific customer and forget about them. And that keeps the backend architecture really well aligned with this strategy. I really like that. Like, this is something that partially answers my next question, is about how you handle the complexity, because like, the distributed IoT environments are extremely complex, and the platform needs to handle most of stuff without bothering customers. Because if you bother your customer every single time that something's going on, then the IoT is not doing any good for anyone. And if you detached your core structure of the platform from the specific use cases of the users, then you've got really nice separation, and this thing actually can scale. So how does your platform scale from the backend perspective? If you could give us some hints about that.
Yeah, I can give you some brief insights about that. That's no problem. I would like to avoid giving so much detail on how sometimes we have some clever tricks here and there. But basically, we have a very flexible structure. That is, the backend is more or less Python based backend. We self designed so we are not using a time series storage on AWS or any third party tool. We use our own databases and host them in our own compute, not our own centers, but a center that we bought into. And so we are deploying our software on foreign service in Germany. We are working with a very modern cluster architecture that we can scale based on the needs. We also have seen that that's very funny, even if it's IoT and you would think it's a sensor you deploy, so it runs 24/7. We definitely can see weak patterns. So, like in the mornings, to yeah, depending on the time zone, to like in the evening, you can see lots and lots of messages coming up, and you can see that there's a pause in the messages in the message stream during the weekend. So it's never 24/7. There's some patterns in there, and so we also have an automatic scaling platform that scales based on the load in order to save costs at the end of the day. We have load balancers that take all the current, the requests from the front end or the messages from the devices. Then we distribute them on queues, and the queues are workers, and they just work off their tasks that they have, and then have different tasks like querying data from the database, writing into the database, distributing it to the front ends. And one of the most extreme parts is the real-time reporting, so that if there's like a measurement coming from any IoT sensor, it gets forwarded into a task pipe, and then one of the tasks is to report this measurement to all front ends that are right now accessing this dashboard. So it's like real-time transmission of measurements, and we are using MQTT for that, because then we can also broadcast to MQTT, so you could subscribe to our real-time engine using any device. And this is how we manage the scaling from a backend perspective. And this allows us, if we scale, then we can just basically increase the amount of service, more or less, so to say.
I like the idea that use auto scaling, so you can scale down if the load is not that huge, and that basically allows you to save infrastructure costs and other different things, which is very, very nice. For a bit younger people listening to this podcast, it is never that easy. Like, you are painting a success story, you've got beautifully designed IoT platform that works perfectly well, is aligned with customer needs, but it's never that easy. So what was the biggest challenge that you encounter during the journey?
Well, there were a couple of challenges. I would say that the biggest challenge we had was in 2019. So Datacake, as you know it right now, and as it how it is on the internet, is basically more or less present since 2020. Because in 2019 we had the biggest challenge. We were actually already developing the product and had a couple of customers, but we were having a hard time to find new customers, and we were completely new to everything. We didn't know how content marketing works. We were listening to a couple of experts that later it turns out were no experts. And so we needed to do everything on our own and find it out. And basically, we never really believed, for example, in content marketing. That's just one example. But then the biggest challenge was how to get new customers. And we were so lucky that during the COVID crisis, we were more or less forced to do content marketing, and that was helping us actually. But that was basically the biggest challenge, to really believe in what you think and believe in your own vision and don't listen to the others and just do it. And it is hard. It takes long. So the first years there was almost no reaction or no progress at all, and then it slowly became more and more. And then because of that happening, that we were so lucky that people were finding Datacake and really liking it. Then the next challenge that came automatically was the growth, because that it came unexpected. And then I remember the growth we had in the first year was so impressive, but it was also a huge challenge because the code, the backend, everything wasn't prepared for it. The servers were too small. And then once you fix something, the next problem comes, which is then again scaling. But these are like the two biggest things: the getting started and the scaling.
I love your insights because, based on my own perspective and experience, technology is not the main challenge in IoT, most of the time at least. And as you pointed out, it was the case. It was not about the technology, it was about building awareness of the value proposition that you offer. And this has nothing to do with technology. Of course, you need to have a solid product to back it up, but building that awareness, that's a huge challenge that is totally not related with the technology, and your programming skills are hardly helpful in that area, unfortunately. This is extremely important. I would like to underline that for the audience as well, that there are companies that fail because they get too successful in too short amount of time. As you said, that you are not prepared to scale, even though your infrastructure is designed to scale. There are always some limits and some trade-offs. And if the demand is too high in very short amount of time, you might have hard time to keep up, and you will crash. Customers will lose faith in you, and the game is over essentially. So, without giving us any secrets, do you think that the technology or the business was the trickiest part to manage during those rough days?
During those very rough days, it was the business part and not the technology. The technology was actually easy. And then once it started, it always is a change or like a mixture. It's always like business versus technology and always the other way around. But the business in general was the, and I would say it's most of the time the challenging part, because there are so many unknowns in it. Where in the technology part, you have a problem, you need to solve it, you need to code something, you need to extend something, and you simply cannot code your new customers. You need to search up for them. Yeah, it's the business part.
Speaking from your own experience, what would you recommend to someone thinking about starting IoT business right now? Because we've got mass layoffs in huge IT companies. Maybe someone thinks that building IoT platform or IoT business in general is such a great idea. So, speaking from your own experience, is it that great idea? And if so, how to handle that?
Yeah. Um, I think IoT has changed a lot. And so I would start answering this question with one of the quotes that you had earlier, a couple of minutes ago, which was that you were basically stating me. I was saying that IoT is not like the technology that changes everything. IoT is connected things to the internet. If somebody would ask me what they want or what they should do, or if it's a good idea to start an IoT and how and what they should do, I would say do it different than we did, because the market has changed. What we see right now is there's lots of consolidation happening. So especially the ecosystem that we are having, there's so many loose components, like you have gateways, sensors, connectivity, SIM cards, network providers, messaging systems, and an IoT platform like Datacake or Grafana or whatever. And you need to basically align everything. So coding skills are always required. But what we see is that right now, the bigger players step into the market. There's value behind IoT. Companies, existing larger companies, invest into buying IoT solutions. And this means that they don't want to spend time on connecting things, writing up a gateway management system, connecting a messaging system, setting up a SIM card. They want a solution. And if somebody would ask me now, how should I start an IoT? I would say pick a market or pick a problem and build a dedicated solution for that problem. Don't do a general purpose, no code, low code IoT platform, because that's the hard thing. And I would go for really finding a niche or a particular problem that you can solve with IoT. And I would say that probably something like energy is where I would focus most on, because of energy is something that in the next years will get to some, yeah, not serious problems, but it needs human attention. And yeah, that would be my advice, more or less.
For everyone listening, please go back 1 minute and re-listen what Simon just said, because I totally agree with you that building generic capability puts you in extremely tough spot, because then you compete with all the hyperscalers like AWS, Microsoft, and there is no way for small company to compete on the generic ground with those huge players. Even more importantly, that doesn't bring any value to the customers. What you just said, customers want to have turnkey solution that solves their problem. They don't really care about all the fancy technology under the hood. They want to have problem solved. So focus on the problem. Hopefully, if you've got some domain knowledge, leverage that domain knowledge to actually address the one of more important problems from that specific field. Build technology that is suitable to solve the gap, basically, right? So start from the totally different perspective than building generic auto-scaling hyper solution that no one really knows how to use, because IoT doesn't provide any value on its own, and this is
Yeah.
extremely important. Let's go back to the content marketing, because this is something very interesting. And of course, content marketing without a great product doesn't really do much, because you will fail quicker than later, but you will fail anyways. You obviously succeeded. So if you could give us some hints based on the content marketing and maybe share a few insights from the book that you wrote on this topic. You said that it's not like that was your main idea to go up through the market and find customers. You never believed in that, and you are converted to the content marketing. So how can we use content marketing right in the narrow niche, which is the IoT field?
Yeah, I think this can be applied to everywhere you want to use content marketing, because I saw and I read lots of books about that actually told me that you need to educate people and your product is always second. And that was something that we were doing. And actually, right now, I know what I was doing, but back then, also because of the COVID crisis, we were just having such amount of time that we were just basically starting creating content marketing. And as you said, it's important that you have a great product. So your product needs to do something. It does not need to fit 100%. It needs to fit, let's say, 51%. And then we were basically starting showcasing the product. So at the end of the day, I was just sitting in my office, having my screen and a camera and recording how I operate the product. And because we designed the product at the beginning to be very easy, people saw that it is easy to use the product. And of course, the product was far away from being perfect. It's always far away from being super perfect. But there was one thing that it did really good, and that was that it was super easy to bring the first IoT devices to the platform. And then my content marketing got attention by people that wanted to start with IoT, and they saw, wow, this is easy to use. I want to test it. And for sure, it was not completed with every features that they were looking for, but they were able to bring the sensors onto the platform, and they built a dashboard. And what then happened was basically that I created more and more content videos around our platform and showcased every little feature. And then we figured out that people were registering on the platform more and more and trying to do the same things we did on the content marketing. And of course, the platform had some bugs, it had some missing things. And then people were writing us emails and saying, like, well, we like your product, it's super great, it's super fast. It would be just good if you would bring this kind of feature. It would be just good if you could bring this optimization. And this was basically the thing that was important for our growth, because people saw my videos, got educated, and wanted to repeat what I was doing on the video. Like, I am watching YouTube videos about how to code, I want to repeat that. And they were seeing my videos and bought some sensors and brought them on the platform. And then they were starting to like the platform because it was so easy. And they basically gave us insights, what they are looking for, what they need. And then we could use this list of feedback to build new features on. So the content marketing for us was some kind of engine or motor to kick off our growth and to get into conversations with potential customers and tell us what they need. And I think that this is not just for IoT. I would say it's in general for every software solution that you build and you want to get early feedback. Do content marketing, showcase, never do it in a sales way, just try to educate people. On our side, we also had a free plan, so people could start right away with Datacake for free.
You mentioned one thing that you should not be in the sales mode when you create content marketing or content in general. Are there any other things that people should avoid? Because ultimately, you create content because you want to have customers that will pay your bills. What are the things that you should really be careful when you create a content and present your product or service that would actually make people think that this is not good fit for me?
Yeah. So it depends a little bit on the target audience, but our target audience with IoT obviously was B2B. So we wanted to sell to businesses. It happened to me later that I realized why businesses actually buy something. They need to invest money in order to get new revenue, new market shares, or something like that. We all do. We invest into software to make our lives easier. So that means that if they become customer from your solution or from an IoT platform like Datacake, they are looking for some help to get more revenue for their company, for example. And if you are the one that can show them how they can use your product to actually achieve this goal in their sales chain automatically, you are very valuable for them. And that means they remember you, you help them, and they are super happy to that you did this and are willing to give you money for the product. So I think that if you start with educating people on how to do things with your software obviously has a purpose. So like our software had the purpose to give dashboards and access and insights, and people wanted to sell it to customers. And our content marketing was was there to show these businesses how they can create their own IoT dashboards. And for free for the first 5 devices. And I think we were never telling like, yeah, the platform costs that amount of money and you need to first put in a credit card. It was just like, hey, here's how you can do it. Buy yourself a sensor, and we show you how you can use temperature sensor to monitor a fridge, and then just go ahead. And they were starting for free. A couple of customers stayed forever on their free plan, had just a few devices, but we saw that there are companies who scaled and scaled and scaled. And then the sales decision or the sales conversation comes after. But on the whole sales process, the first steps is that you need to educate and tell people how they can use your software as a service. And then the rest will follow automatically, because once you help them, you establish a relationship. Like Sales is just conversation, and you establish a relationship, and then then everything will be good at the end of the day.
That is very true. That even into B2B space, at the end of the day, people buy from people,
Yeah.
people trust people, not like company with company, because company is just some abstract entity. So that is extremely good point. I've got one question for you though. You mentioned that the number of customers stayed on that free plan. So starting with some new product or service, do you see that offering a free plan as a opportunity or risk that can be actually abused by the customers?
That's a question I often hear also internally in our company. From my experience, I would say you should always do a free plan. You should limit it, of course. Even we have limited it, but there are, I'm not going to tell how officially these ways are, but you can abuse it and use more than the couple of free devices we have. But to be honest, we never saw that somebody was really abusing it. Even if they know how they could do it, they weren't. If I'm designing a product, I always take a look at myself. How do I buy product? What kind of products do I buy, and what do I expect from a product? And what I don't like is if I cannot really test it out and first need to talk to a sales guy. What I want to do is I want to test it out. And I think that the majority of the people are like that. And for us, offering a free plan, it is a limited free plan. You can get all the features, but just limited amount of data storage and just for a limited amount of devices. But it's not time limited. It's available every for the whole lifetime. The thing is just that we saw people trying things out, and I think it's really important to have that. And my opinion is, and my advice is, always do that.
I'm old school guy, as I said, and for me, trust is extremely important. So, as you said, if you trust your customers that they won't abuse your platform, that really builds very strong connection. Then those customers will grow potentially, will switch to paid plans, and you will be happy ever after,
Yeah.
basically. So, speaking about customers, could you share most interesting success story?
Yeah, we recently started actually a success story section on our webpage. And one of the things that I really enjoyed during the last years was that we got in contact with so many different people around the world, because offering software as a service, it's available worldwide. And it's very cool to get in touch with people in Latin America, in Australia, in Asia, and like everywhere around the world. And IoT is really being used all around the world, and that's cool. And we have a couple of different use cases. So, for example, I can just briefly mention a few because I think there are even greater or any or similar success stories on the platform. But for example, in Germany or in Austria, we have a company that is using early fire prevention systems, so like wildfire prevention systems, and they are detecting the situations inside of a forest to prevent early fires. That is, I think, really cool because it has like an environmental factor in it. We have someone in the UK that is monitoring fridges for restaurants, and this is also something where you can save energy because and avoid food loss and food waste because of broken fridges or fridges that are working like more than they should to save energy. Um, we have somebody that has in Canada a large cannabis farm that is using cheap soil moisture monitors and Datacake in order to raise 10% of their revenue because they can grow better plants. Yeah, I think these are the things that you see on our webpage. Ah, yeah, there's an Italian large scale clinic that was able to use IoT to reduce the energy bill by a couple of hundred thousands of euros because of energy waste, especially with climate machines like ACs and so on.
Personally, whenever I see that technology is used for good, this is always like a huge win for me. Because of
Yeah,
course we all use technology to earn money, but if we can do something good in the process, that actually makes me going. Because
yeah.
I see that what we are doing really makes sense. So that's great, and I love the examples that you shared because they show the same perspective, and this is just a good attitude in my opinion. For someone that would like to learn from you, follow your steps, what's the best way to buy your book and to contact you to learn more about building IoT solutions or solutions in general?
Yeah, well, basically, there's a couple of ways how to contact me. For sure, business wise, if somebody has a question about IoT or needs a good platform to get started with, you always are free to get started on Datacake. And we have a super great live chat where you can talk to our customer support. And also, I'm on the team as well, so you can get me there as well. You can always reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I am actively still posting a couple of things on content marketing on LinkedIn almost every day. Yeah, and you're right. Recently, as I mentioned before, it's this thing that in 2019 we had this super challenging situation, business wise, if we will continue, how we will continue, how to get new customers. And basically I learned a lot through failure, but also through reading a lot of books. And basically I wish that there was a book that could answer my questions, and there was no book. So I one of my goals was to write a book, and last year I started writing a book, and it's a hard thing. It's really hard. The first pages are easy, but then just keep on bringing new material and so on. It's really not so easy. So I recently started it, and it's almost done, 85,000 words. And there is a webpage called The Content Growth Formula. I probably changed the title, where you can pre-order my book already. It's not a pre-order, it's done, but it needs some kind of restructuring. So yeah, you can check it out on the website, and feel free to get in contact over LinkedIn, and probably you can also share my email address, I don't know, in the recording or so. Yeah.
Yeah, I will put your email address in the show notes. And I agree with you. Wrote a book myself on using IoT leveraging AWS cloud, and that is quite of a challenge. And that's true. Like those first few pages are easy because you've got all of those ideas in head, like you're
Yeah.
motivated. But after a few months in, like you cannot look at this thing ever
Yeah.
again, and it is not finished, and you know it is not finished. And I've got a feeling, and as you said about your platform, is that there are it will never be perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect platform, service, or book. So you need to take the courage, I would say, to say, okay, it is as good as I'm able to deliver it, and it is basically what it is. So yeah, that is true, and it really relates to my own experience. Simon,
Yeah.
thank you so much for accepting invitation, for sharing all of those insights. I think you've got great success story, very inspiring for people, and it proves my point that even no code or low code platform work on top of well-designed source code under the hood that no one really cares about
Ex-
apart from you. But because of that source code and that proper structure design, it is actually what it is. Thank you so much
yeah.
for taking time to meet with me.
Absolutely welcome. Thank you also for the invitation. Well, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you for listening. Go to thefingers.com to find more materials about the Internet of Things domain. My name is Łukasz Malinowski, the Internet of Things advisor and trainer.